the advanced voting at the Lower Roswell Road, Marietta location. I was also a poll monitor during the processing of absentee ballots and a poll watcher on election day. So let me just tell you what I observed briefly and what raised flags to me that something was wrong as well. Around 10 a.m. on November 5th, I arrived at the State Farm Arena, Fulton County Board of Elections, to witness the vote counting of absentee ballots. Upon arrival, I was not asked to present my credentials, but I identified myself. I was told where to sit, and I sat on a table right in the media cameras, and everybody was right behind me. Shortly thereafter, I just noticed to my right a young man just with a paper ballot punching in the selections on the ballot on a voting machine. I go, how strange is that? Why not put it through the scanner? So I asked the supervisor, what is he doing? Can you explain to me? And he said, sure, what we're doing right now is after the military ballots or are transcribed on a proper format, or ballots that come in damaged, we try to salvage those, he says. So we're just, transferring them to a new ballot, and then this is the process, this is the procedure that we're doing. So it's still very strange to me that it would not be put through a scanner, because when this young man was doing that, nobody was verifying what he was doing behind him. So technically, he was voting for someone else on a voting machine, but nobody was, trying to verify what he was doing. So I took video and I took pictures, and I also recorded my conversation with the supervisor with that explanation. I also told them that I noticed that none of the people there had credentials on. And he said, oh, many of them don't have. And that's my brother right there, the one that was doing the voting for someone else. It just seems so out of not following protocol to me, I left shortly thereafter when I heard that the counting was over, the counting of votes was over, so I went to DeKalb County facility. And when I got there, again, I identified myself to another poll watcher who walked me around. This was a very strange facility. All the rooms were whatever was happening there was segregated, and behind closed doors. And I saw that the poll watchers were many feet away from what was happening, not able to observe closely. And I was in the room where the scanners were and the poll watchers were, and 30 feet away. How could they possibly see what's going on? There was another table where they were duplicating the votes, the military votes. And I asked, why are you duplicating those? And I understand that some of the military votes, they vote online, so they have to be in the proper format. Okay, again, nobody was looking at that close enough, to see if they were doing it correctly. I spoke to my fellow poll watchers, and they were very frustrated that they were not able to see. An attorney for the city came to me and said, you need to move. Maybe because I was too close to where the scanners were, behind these glass doors. And so I said, well, I've been a poll monitor, I said, and I was able to move around, walk around. And why is it that the other monitors here or poll watchers are not able to do the same? And I showed him the statute of Georgia that says that we're able to do that. So he looked it over, and came back with some tape, masking tape or some sort of blue tape to put mark on the floor next to the tables where we could then stand and observe closer. But again, this was 2 days after, right? a lot happened before that we were not able to see close enough. So that's what happened. That's what the major observations for me is just appalling, really, what's happened. And I just want to say I'm heartbroken, hurt, appalled, angry at the level of fraud and irregularities that we are witnessing in this election, and especially ashamed that this is happening in the state of Georgia. I ask you to please do your job as elected officials, the job that we have entrusted you to do, and ensure the integrity of the vote for the American people, who on November 3rd, we look forward to casting our votes. Because as of now, we feel completely disenfranchised, and it is as if our vote did not count, was nulled. And I know I speak for the 74 million Americans who voted for Donald J. Trump, the best president this country has ever had. And I'm proud of my country, and I'm speaking from my heart. And what is happening in our country is a travesty, and we cannot allow it. We cannot accept it. So thank you so much for listening to me today and to all of us. Really appreciate it, and I hope that you do the right thing.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Okay, I know that there are some senators that would like to make a statement or two, and I'll allow that, and then we'll close it out after that. So, Senator Parent, I know you wanted to say something, so I'll recognize you now.
Thank you. I'm number 6. Am I on? Yeah.
You're on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, colleagues, I sort of feel like where I sit that it's kind of like an Alice in Wonderland moment where you've gone down a rabbit hole, and through the looking glass, everything gets wavy and seems really confusing. But to me, that seems like a sort of alternate universe that we don't have a lot of evidence of, frankly. And there's a lot of misinformation or misstatements even being disseminated by some witnesses, probably in good faith. But when you investigate further, you realize that this is really not a surprise, because if you've read the affidavits that have been filed with a lot of these lawsuits, what you will find is that people see things that they think are suspicious, but they do not understand the elections process in Georgia. And once that gets investigated, you find out that what they have actually seen are things unfolding the way that they should be. And I just would like to mention just a couple of those things. First of all, in the video that we were shown, as I mentioned to our Whip Gooch, the Secretary of State has issued many statements about all those things that were raised in the video. And the Secretary of State says our monitor was there. And in fact, since this morning, they've identified the person. It's a young white guy between 25 and 30 wearing a blue jacket that is in the video. That is their monitor that was there the whole time. Some people have filed affidavits not understanding that there is a duplication process when ballots can't be scanned, when they're torn, when they're UOCAVA ballots, because then when they're UOCAVA, Uniformed Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act, something like that, people are printing them on home computers at their houses abroad. They have to be duplicated, and there's a procedure for doing that. So you see a lot of these affidavits where people are like, this seems weird, this seems fraudulent, when actually it's the process. The human error raised in DeKalb, there have been, by Mr. Amick, I think, there have been numerous news stories about that. That would have been caught later in the process. If you canvass the vote properly at the county level before you go ahead and submit, you will catch things like that. And that discrepancy would have been identified even without, and I'm not saying he didn't identify discrepancy. He did. It's just that it never rose to the level of being a problem, and there's no evidence that it wouldn't have been caught. So it's not evidence of fraud. People who think, oh, I didn't request an absentee ballot. Well, you're on the rollover list. 600,000 people. So there's just a lot of things where we really need actual evidence of things that are provable, that are widespread irregularities that would rise to the level of having flipped the election. And, we heard a lot about particularly out of Mayor Giuliani, about the fact that there were far fewer ballots rejected in this election. Well, that is true, because we changed the law. We changed the law after the 2018 election to allow an opportunity to cure. And the laws related to the oath were also changed by this body. So these are all things that have happened. There are some innocent explanations for many of these things. And, you know, this was a very close election, but in the end, the number of ballots and the number of voters matched. After the hand count, they matched. The number of voters and the number of ballots matched, and that has been confirmed numerous times. We did a hand count with the human readable text for the presidential election. We're about to complete our third count. I feel like if we were truly interested in getting to the bottom of a lot of concerns that people have raised, and I do think that those need to be addressed, because faith in our elections is crucial. People do feel that results can't be trusted. That is a problem. You know, first of all, there is the 23 investigators and 250 complaints at the Secretary of State's office. But even aside from that, if we were interested in finding out the truth behind statements being made, we would have a hearing where many of those could be discussed, and we could ask questions of people that have knowledge about how Georgia's election systems are run. And we did not have that. So it seems pretty clear to me that we aren't actually really interested in trying to get to the bottom of some of these complaints. Could our election be run better? Human error does not equal fraud. Bad management does not equal fraud. Of course we need to have secure elections. I'm sure there are myriad ways that you guys think it could be run better, and that I think it could be run better. There are, so let's talk about those. But we do not have evidence of widespread irregularities that would change the election, and that's what you need to really talk about this. I've mentioned it 3 times already today. 40 judges and 40 lawsuits have not found that. Attorney General Barr has not found that. Brad Raffensperger and everyone involved in elections in Georgia have not found that. And with that, we get to this notion that we should seize the power away from the voters. I think we all know, and Senator Heath, Chairman Heath raised it, in order for us to even contemplate doing that, we would have to call a special session and change the law. The governor, speaker, and lieutenant governor have already said, we're not calling a special session. You need 3/5 of the legislature to call a special session. Clearly that's not gonna happen. If these folks have evidence of fraud that would change the election, they can and should present it in the courts and to the Secretary of State's office. People who have the ability to investigate, recommend changes to us, and if there's a big problem, then let's hear it, you know? Then we have to take action. But until we have that, engaging in a lot of these things does more to undermine Georgians' trust in the election than it does to help it. Ever since today started, I have been attacked. The Secretary of State's office has had to take action as it relates to my address. And I've started to get some of the vile things that some of our other colleagues at the Secretary of State's office has. We've given it oxygen. And I think that does a disservice to so many Georgians. You got evidence, show up in court and prove it. That's how it has to be. And in the meantime, we've got OCGA 21-2 501F, where we have said that the person who gets the most votes is who gets the electors. And do we really want to mess around and have to redo every single one of our own elections too? I'm a little confused about that. Are none of us legitimately elected? Can anyone answer that for me? Do we know? I guess not, if we're not certifying the election. I really appreciate all of you for listening to, from where I sit, I see it. I know we've all gotten blown up since the election. I know that all of you have a lot more than me. Even I have. I know it's hard. I know there's so much pressure. And I know that with the tweets coming out of the White House, it's pretty darn difficult. And when you've got US senators saying, resign, Secretary of State, it's pretty darn difficult to get up and be like, actually the election was okay. I'm gonna tell you the truth. That's pretty hard, I get it. We all are under a lot of political pressure, so I understand where you sit. Thank you for allowing me to make a closing statement, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Senator Brass.
Mr. Chairman, first off, I want to say thank you to you for being willing to hold this hearing, and members of the committee for staying here as long as you did. Regardless if we heard evidence of fraud or not, we owe it to our citizens to find the truth. And what we know is if we dig in and when we do find the truth, there's going to be a large part of this population in this state that is not going to be happy. But the truth is we owe them that. We owe each and every voter in this state an opportunity to see the truth. And again, we keep talking about the fraud, but for me, I want to know was state law followed? And we have heard clear evidence today that state law was not followed time after time after time. And that is a problem. And if state law was not followed in an election, then we do need to keep an open mind on a path forward. Again, you know, we all are under tremendous pressure, all of us, because this is a pivotal point in this state, in this country, and there's no decision that's going to be an easy one. So I pray for each and every one of y'all. I pray for myself that we all make the right decision, but I really pray that we dig in and we find the truth.
Senator Gooch, did you want to make?
Yeah, I want to thank you for letting me be in here today. I'm not a member of your subcommittee, but I have been here all day. I started out with Chairman Heath in the first meeting where we had a couple of hours of testimony, and this meeting has gone on now for, what, 6 hours? I know now why I don't want to be on the Judiciary Committee. But let me get serious for a minute. As I spoke earlier this morning, I talked about the people I represent back home, just like each of us do. We all have a constituency, 56 state senators, roughly 200,000 constituents, and we work on behalf of them. We represent them. We are their voice while we're at work in this Capitol. I sit around the table at various meetings and at restaurants, and I talk to people on a daily basis, bus drivers, farmers, chicken farmers, cattle farmers, construction workers, nurses, school teachers, administrators, business people. And what I can tell you, what I'm hearing, and I'm sure you are, is that the voters and the citizens of Georgia have lost confidence in this election. Some of it may be because their candidate did not win. I get that. But I can also tell you, based on what I heard here today, going on 8 hours of testimony, we have a problem in this state. And we have a problem with our regulations, our ordinances, our laws, our policies. And we need to, as Chairman Brass said, we need to find the truth. We are obligated to seek the truth. I'm not sure how this committee or any legislative committee will find the truth without help from an investigative arm of government. So if you're trying to move toward a special session, let's approach it that way. But I think we need to move faster. We need to move deliberately, and I would recommend you consider requesting help from the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to begin a full forensic audit of the November 3rd election in Georgia. And I think we should consider doing that this week.
Anyone else? Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What number is it?
I'm sorry, wait a minute. 2.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you and everyone staying for the late hour. I appreciate, as the mayor said, complimenting the minority for their approach to this. I would disagree with one of my colleagues in one regard. The comment that we don't need these hearings. I really could not disagree with that more strongly. We need these hearings. Our voters, our citizens need to see us having these hearings because they need to know that we, as their representatives, are willing to investigate wrongdoing. Do we need the truth, Senator? You're absolutely right. We do need to get down to the truth. But I want to take it one step further. We need to have accountability for those that have engaged in wrongdoing. That's the next step. That is the step beyond fact-finding and truth-gathering. We've got to have accountability. You can't have accountability if you don't have these hearings. If fraud and impropriety are occurring, you can't stop it by just lamenting after each election, wow, that was a mess. I hope it doesn't happen again. It won't change. It won't change. So what we've got to do is figure out some form of accountability, and we cannot expect anything to change with regard to what seems to be the perennial fraud and impropriety in certain precincts and certain areas that occurs every election unless we start and decide to have some form and measure of accountability for those that engage in fraud, those that engage in wrongdoings, and choose to violate our law. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your patience. Thank you for staying late. I appreciate your leadership on this committee. Thank you. And I thank all my colleagues for being here.
Senator Summers, you want to say something?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing a non-member to sit at the table and be engaged in these topics. Guys, I've run 4 elections in 1 year. I will happily run another election if we can get a fair and balanced election in Georgia. She asked the question, I'd gladly do it again. I'm telling you straight up, I totally believe that we should be called into special session and allow the legislative process to take place and make sure, as several of these senators have said, that we give people the honest truth about the election. Whoever wins, wins, but we need to know the facts and we need to know who that person is. And I would gladly do a re-over in my election if that's what it takes. But boys and girls, we're here to vote and stand up and be strong. It's time we acted like legislatures and come together, ask our governor to call us in for a special session. He wins either way. If we find no improprieties, the governor looks good. If we find improprieties, the governor looks good. Let's get on with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Beach.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on this subcommittee. I'm not on judiciary, but thank you for allowing me. And I also want to thank you for all the hard work you put into this. For a guy that's leaving office, you have put in a lot of hours on this, and I just really want to thank you. But I just would say I'd agree with my colleagues. I think Senator Brass hit the nail on the head. We got to get to the truth. And then I think you hit the nail on the head, Senator Gooch. We got to restore voter confidence. I can tell you, the voters have lost confidence in our system. And I'm gonna tell you, in my 8 years here in the Senate, I have never received so many emails, phone calls, text messages. I put my cell phone number on my website and on my Senate page, so I've been getting a lot of calls. And I want to just share one of the calls that I keep getting. And I had a lady call me, and this is kind of the calls I'm getting. And she said, Senator, she said, I stood in the Alpharetta Library for 2.5 hours to early vote. And I went in there, I showed them my driver's license, my photo ID, I signed my name and matched the signature in the database. I got my card, I voted, I checked my ballot, I scanned it. She said gave the stylus pen back, I got my sticker, I walked back to my car, and I was proud I waited 2.5 hours to vote. I didn't have a problem with it, I voted. Now she said, because of the agreement that Senator Dolezal talked about with the Secretary of State entered into, she said, I know now on absentee ballots, they don't have to show ID. The voter signatures don't have to match with the database. And she said, I feel like my vote was compromised. I feel like my vote was diluted. And I feel like my vote didn't matter. And I'm not going back to vote in January. I said, ma'am, I need you to go back and vote. You got to go back January 5th. But that's what we're dealing with right now, and that's why I'm so glad we had these hearings. I wanted to tell that story so that we could get to that. And Senator Kennedy, you're right. We can't just wait and think that things are going to get better at the next election. We need to take action. That's what the state of Florida did. If you remember, we heard today, in 2000, they had a mess on their hands with the Bush-Gore election. They got their results back in by 9 p.m. on election night, and we were still counting votes 2 weeks later. That's ridiculous. It's uncalled for. And Broward County and Dade County were a mess. They got it cleaned up. They've got twice the population we have, twice the elderly population, had more absentee ballots, and they're on 2 different time zones, and they got their votes in and called at 9 o'clock. Our goal as a state, in my opinion, should have the election results by the 11 o'clock news, the night of the election, so our voters know that we've got the winners and the losers, and we should be able to do it. But we got to get to the truth and then figure out how to make it right. So I just, again, I'm glad we had this. I hope we dig into it and have investigations and make sure this was a fair election and make sure the elections from here on out are fair. So thank you for all your hard work, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Tillery, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I asked a lot of my questions earlier today, but thank you for giving me a second to close. First, I want to thank the members of the committee. I appreciate your cordiality today and how you handled things, even though I know there was a lot of passion. But I do appreciate how you handled yourselves. There were things I learned today. When I came into this room, I'd gotten a lot of questions, just like many of you, from calls from your constituents. And because of some of the things I heard today, I think I'm better prepared to answer some of them. I'll carry you back through just 1 or 2 of them. When we heard from the colonel, and he mentioned about things from Dominion, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of calls about that as well. And we walked him through, and he got to the end, and he said, if you did a 100% recount or 100% canvass, then I would have to say it would probably remove some of my concerns about a glitch. That's helpful for me. That was testimony you heard here today. When you heard from Grace Lynn, the student from Georgia, who talked about not being able to, going in and hearing that she had already requested an absentee ballot. I know I've heard that 100 times. I'm sure you've heard it as well. The testimony that we were able to get from her, and then thanks to Senator Jordan, Senator Dolezal, and others, we were able to show her, no, here's how that actually works, and we were able to help answer her question, which watching that is going to help me answer questions for my constituents. Those are the things I learned. That's where I was able to grow, and I can answer questions from my constituents. But there was one other thing we saw today, too. One of our senators already mentioned an Alice in Wonderland moment. That happened for me, too, today. And that happened when I believe her name was Miss Pick, played her video. I can't explain that one. I cannot go back with that video and help my constituents understand what was done and why it was done. When I see the table come in at 8:23, it's got a drape all the way over it. I see something happen at 11:23 later on. I see folks leaving at 10:30. I can't answer that one. That's the one that I'm going to be focused on trying to answer as we move forward. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your help today answering questions that our constituents bring, members of this committee. But I remind you that our work doesn't end today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You want Senator Jones? You want to? Yes, sir. Let me make sure I have you.
14 here.
Yep, gotcha.
Senator Ligon, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you. I echo what Senator Beach said about, for the amount of work, knowing that you've served distinguishedly 10 years in the Georgia legislature in the Senate, and know you're heading out. Well, you and Senator Heath as well, but for the work you've put in for this committee, I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, because you show that you're a true public servant and a true patriot for what you've done. The one thing, I'm glad we got to have this meeting today, because there's one thing that all of us have in common in this room. We've had 3 election cycles now, 16, 18, and 20, where all of us have been disappointed in the results. And each one of those election cycles have brought forth allegations of some sort of mischief or fraud or things of that nature. And it's our job as elected officials, especially when those allegations are in your own state, it's our job as elected officials to seek out, as Senator Brass said, the truth and what has transpired. And what we saw today, I was like Senator Tillery here. I was seeking, answers to questions to share with constituents, and like as he eloquently said, what we've witnessed today with the video from the State Farm Arena, those have raised a lot more questions about the process as well as what went on, particularly in one county here in our state. So my only regret is that we haven't started these hearings sooner. However, with the findings of the video just coming out as of last night, maybe it is in our good fortune that we started the hearings now. But I definitely think that moving forward, and we need to move quickly in trying to establish what a significant forensic investigation would look like, and what role do we need to play in legislators of seeking not just to answer questions from November 3rd, but prevent it from happening on January 5th, which is the most important election we have right in front of us here. So thank you again, Senator. I also want to thank Senator Dolezal for your behind-the-scenes hard work, as well as Senator Beach. I know y'all put in a lot of work and a lot of hours making this happen as well. So, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone else before I close? Senator Dolezal and then Senator Heath. Go ahead, Senator Dolezal. Let me get you.
Mr. Chairman, you've been exalted, and I'll echo the exaltation. And I will extend that to Chairman Heath as well. I thought that the meeting this morning laid a nice groundwork, and it was nice to be able to Mr. Chairman Tillery's point earlier, to be able to ask questions of the Secretary's staff, if nothing else than to inform ourselves and inform our constituents, is to the way that this works. What didn't get discussed today that I think is important to illuminate is the fact that we discovered, really by accident, significant structural flaws in the way that we conduct our elections. We had 4 counties discover thousands of ballots via a risk-limiting audit that was never supposed to happen. The audit wasn't supposed to happen this year. It was supposed to be a pilot that was happening in the future, and it was never envisioned to be every county counting every vote, period. So the system worked because we got lucky. We have a significant problem when we don't know when we finish an election that the numerator matches the denominator. The fact that we don't know the denominator. We hear at one point in time at 6 o'clock one morning that there's 25,000 more votes to go, and then we hear at 10 o'clock that there's 45,000 more votes to go. I understand somebody may have misspoken that, but there's no master place that any one of us could go to the Friday after the election and say, here's how many votes are left to count, because we know how many ballots came in and we know how many ballots have been counted. That's simple blocking and tackling when it comes to functioning something like this. This is one big data exercise. And we have to get the blocking and tackling correct to instill confidence in this process. Because when you find thousands of missing ballots, when you hear that one number is still outstanding, then you hear that another number is still outstanding, there's none of us that can stand behind a podium and say this process is working well. We keep hearing this caveat around the irregularities or the fraud. And the caveat is that it's not enough to change the outcome of the election. That's the consistent caveat. Gabe Sterling said in a press conference that he knows there was fraud in this election. How does he know that? Is he wrong? Is he right? What he also said was, but we know it's not enough to change the election. How does he know that? There's 250 open investigations and probably should have been more. We heard this morning from the Secretary's office that 300 people double voted again. We had 1,000 people double vote in June, apparently 300 double voted this time. They said the number was down. They told us there were 70 felons that voted. We've heard about thousands of people where their ballots were sent out of state. We were also told that we know that we're asking a lot of the of the election officials to review 1.3 million signatures, something we've never asked them to do before. The Secretary tells us it's not the best way to do it. But we won't even go through the process to review a random sample of those signatures to figure out how well we did. That's unacceptable. We owe it to ourselves as the people that are charged with the responsibility of getting this process right to understand when the system was stressed and when it was flexed, how did we perform? There's not one business in America that would go through this process and have something change in that manner and do zero review. And ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the signature match process, we've done zero review. It may have been flawless. I would like to be able to say that it was flawless, but I don't think that any of us believe that it was flawless, because I don't believe that any of us think that our signatures are consistent enough over a period of time from when you last got your driver's license. Senator Beach, I'm sure you got yours, within the last couple of years, but I got mine 10 years ago. My signature's changed. There is an incredible amount of disinterest in the media and frankly from the minority party in really digging into this process. And I do respect the senators who were here today, but there is not a call for a signature audit. There has not been a call for investigations. We've heard for the last month that this State Farm Arena situation was under investigation. Why did it take us a month to get a video? Why did it take us a month to get a video and it wasn't even produced by an employee of the state? That's patently absurd. We have to do better, and we can do better. That video is a bombshell. You saw the media and the observers leave the room at the same time. That tells you they were told to leave. Why were they told to leave? The media needs to get interested in this, and they need to get interested in this quickly, because they have a role to play in this as well. And the fact that I can guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee you, I would suspect that if the allegations were on the other foot and in the other direction, that we wouldn't have waited a month for an open records request to be filed, or however they obtained that video, to see that video. We have to get a lot more curious, because we have to get it right. And Senator Parent, I'm not intending to throw you under the bus, and I apologize for my comments about what I just said, but I do really wish that I sensed a bipartisan effort to dig into the details of what happened so that we can affirm it in either direction. This, to me, is not about who won an election. I don't think this is about who won an election to you. I don't think this is about who won. You referenced, maybe our elections aren't legitimate. We don't know what happened because we haven't lifted up the hood to look. 1.3 million signatures, and we haven't bothered to look. And I would like to link arms with anybody, regardless of party, to get to the bottom of exactly what happened so that we can move forward, and quite frankly, so that we can do a better job and know what laws we need to change. We've all gotten a little bit of a baptism by fire in election law and what our state laws say, but whether it is a special session, which I do think we need to have, or it is when we come back in January, we have our work cut out for us, and we don't know what we need to change unless we look at exactly what happened. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and senators, people who have persevered throughout the day. I don't have much to add to this other than just a few observations. Someone had mentioned earlier that, mistakes are not necessarily criminal, or I don't remember how the comment was made, but I agree with that. I think we all make mistakes. We've all misinterpreted things. None of us are perfect. But what's potentially at risk here is
at least the direction that this country takes. I think that, well, number one, it is exceedingly embarrassing that that we're having this discussion. I remember watching the videos of, what was it, the 2000 election when Florida going through a similar process, and I mean, I was kind of laughing like, those guys have got to be a bunch of idiots down there. And maybe I should not have had those thoughts, because now the camera's on us, and it doesn't look good. But there's enough mistakes that have seemingly been made. You know, I don't think anybody will come out of this clean, including the legislature. I mean, when you go back and look at what the legislature has done, and you know, I think I've been around to see a whole lot of these laws that we're struggling with right now. I saw a lot of those taking place, and I kind of remember the mindset as we did various things, and I look back on it and I'm thinking, yep, you know, we thought we were doing the right thing, but now I don't think that it was the right thing. And guess what? That's what we do every time we get together. We're tweaking what the previous legislature has done. There's not a lot of brand new, clean ideas that come out of the legislature. As I sat and listened to the witnesses in the Government Oversight Committee meeting this morning, admittedly, I could sit there and pick through some of that and say, well, maybe that's not a false statement, but it might not be the whole truth either. As I sat here and listened today, this afternoon, same thing. I mean, certainly everybody that testified gave you some reason to suspect that things were not done properly. Maybe they weren't intentional mistakes, maybe they weren't intentional acts, but there were certainly opportunities. And then the professor that, you know, essentially his position seemed to be that, okay, boys and girls, this is in your hands. You should exercise your power as a legislature and straighten this out. You know, if the legislature can convince itself that we have created an environment where you can't conduct a true and accurate election, then maybe we do need to step up. But before we get to that point, I mean, we would be setting a precedent there that is, you just need to be very careful. The legislature has a problem that I know we have discussed for years, and that is that we can't swear witnesses in a committee. So you can come here and stand at that podium and say anything you want to say, and there's no recourse. So the problem that we've got as a legislature is that now we've got to take that information with the very limited staffing and capabilities that we have. As a legislature, we're essentially one-man shows. There's a few of us there's a few legislators who have one admin assigned to them, very few. There is no legal staff that is assigned to a certain committee chairman or a certain legislator. We all use the same pool of resources, and it's very shallow. So those are some problems that need to be resolved, and the problem that's in front of us right now, tonight, is that for us to take any further action, I think the first thing we got to do is go on our own to find the facts. Now, you know, we talked, the I think it was the colonel, was talking about the Dominion machines and voting machines as a whole. I will tell you that there is a risk at exposing how that machine works. I read, somebody told me that somewhere on a blog, that the source code for these machines is open source and it's available to everybody. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. But I can tell you that it is very difficult, if you know exactly how a machine works, not to figure out how to break it. So there's some risk in opening up that to the public, to any investigator or hacker, if you will. But there's also a gain there in that now, at least the allegations, the appearance is we don't know what can happen. I think I could write software that would not be corruptible through a USB port. But I don't know that that's the way that software is written. I have heard them, testimony about, Fulton County said they had this mobile voting precinct. Well, that to me implies that you got to reload data. When you move it from one precinct to another, you got to reload data. But there was also testimony that says nothing gets changed in them in the final hours. So there's a lot of work that we got to do before we take any drastic actions. But I think that we got to get started on it. And I don't know who's best to work on that, but there is a world of work to be done. And I really don't know that if we had all 56 senators working on this, dedicated, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, that we can really resolve all this. But we got to do what we can do. We got a mess on our hands. And as has been stated, this whole, a democracy is dependent upon being able to trust the outcome of elections. We've got to do something to restore not only Georgians' trust in our elections, but the country has got to trust our elections. Georgia is significant to the United States of America. So I don't have any answers. I do see there's a lot of problems, and just as I stated in my committee this morning, it was exceedingly difficult to put that committee meeting together. I know this one was as well. I don't know about the legalities, but if you want to go to a county and say, I want to see this box of ballots and I want to study them, I want to feel of them, I want to resolve some of these things, there's a security risk at that. Because frankly, I don't trust every legislator. So, there's a balance here that we got to strike, and I don't know how we get there, but we got a mess on our hands.
Thanks, Senator Heath. Senator Harper, are you number 10?
Yes, sir. And I also want to say thank you, although I'm not a member of your subcommittee. Thank you for letting me sit in this afternoon. I appreciate it. But being a member of Senator Heath's committee, I just want to express, as others have, to both you, Senator Ligon, and Senator Heath, both of our chairmen today, for your outstanding, I think, run hearings both this morning and this afternoon. I think y'all both did a phenomenal job. You should be commended on the work that you put in prior today, and the work obviously that's going to continue going forward. So thank you both for doing that. And I think it's all evident why we're all here. I know Senator Gooch referenced this, and many others have. Like Senator Beach, in my 8 years of service in the legislature, I can't think of another single issue that I have heard from more of my constituents about than this one issue that we're here discussing today. And I agree with a lot of the comments made. One of the roles of the General Assembly and one of the roles of the legislature is oversight. And that's why we're here today, and that's the whole purpose of us convening these hearings today is to provide that oversight that we're expected to do on behalf of the constituencies that send us up here to the Gold Dome to represent their behalf. And I think that's why we're here today, and we should do these things. We should have these type of hearings. We should investigate issues when they arise. And I want to say thank you to the Secretary of State's office this morning, Fulton County, and all the witnesses that showed up, Mayor Giuliani for coming today and providing testimony. I think it was awesome opportunity for us to have an open forum and a discussion to be able to ask those questions of all of those entities. To Senator Parent, I'm going to reiterate what I said this morning to the Secretary's staff and their folks. If you have received threats today because of things that you may or may not have said, I hope my colleagues will join me in condemning any of those acts or outlandish threats that may be coming towards you. And I reiterate my comments this morning in condemning the same things against the Secretary and his wife and his staff. I think that's unbecoming of us as citizens, and that's not who we are as a basis of an American citizenry and the democracy that we all enjoy. And I think those type of things can have an impact on the foundation of government that we have. But the questions that we asked and the answers that we were able to get today, I think it boils down to a couple of things that it's already been said. It's about getting to the truth, and I think Senator Brass summed it up well in his statement of was state law followed. I think that is a legitimate question, and I think the longer this hearing went today, I think there's more questions that can be asked. And I think if you look at the hearing that was conducted this morning and the hearing that was conducted this afternoon, I think there's some differences in those presentations that should be looked at. And whether we're talking about chain of custody or signature verification or signature match issues, as Senator Dolezal has very adequately presented on today. And I think, all of this laid out is giving us an opportunity to lay a foundation for us to take some action, as Senator Heath has alluded to. That I think this has given us an opportunity to lay the groundwork and lay a foundation for us to look at our laws and make sure that our election law is proper. And if we need to make those adjustments, we can make the proper adjustments that need to be made, and we can give voters the confidence that they need that our election system and our state is secure, and that they know that when they cast their ballot, they know that their ballot is counted, and that they can have trust in our system of self-government, because without that foundation, we can no longer be a nation that is governed by the people. Or a nation that is built on the foundations that we were built on as a country and as a state. And I just want to say thank you all. Thank you both. Again, thank you to all the committee members. I thought this was a well-run committee. I thank you to everybody for the cordial conversations that were had. I think this just has given us an opportunity to have a transparent process for our constituencies to see, and I think that's all they've been asking for. So thank you both for allowing it to happen.
Thank you. Well, let me close out by thanking, first of all of the citizens of this state who have reported what they see as irregularities or misconduct or fraud, and that have contacted your legislators to ask them to look into that. That is part of your civic duty. And part of our duty as legislators is to look into this and to have an appropriate solution that will resolve this issue. I want to thank Senator Stone's staff, Layton, for helping put this together. She's worked very hard and has stayed late, and others. I want to thank some senators, Senator Dolezal, Beach, and Jones, for helping. They worked hard to help put this together as well. I appreciate all of your efforts. And others, Senator Heath, for your work earlier. You've been here all day. Some of you have been here all day on the two committees. Thank each one of you for being here. I do think this is very important. It's something that we needed to do, and I know that there's a lot more work that will be done in the future, in the near term, and also in the long term. So with that, we're adjourned, and thank you.